Chapter 9 of The Thanksgiving Treasure by Gail Rock. I went back to Rehnquist the very next afternoon. I leaned my bike up against the front porch, but didn't knock on the door, so he couldn't accuse me of disturbing him. I thought I saw him watching from behind the curtain as I went toward the barn. Treasure was standing quietly in her stall, munching hay. I had brought her carrots and sugar again, and when I showed them to her, she came right to me. I talked to her and let her get used to me a bit, and then I found a brush and started to work on her. She was a little fidgety at first, but finally settled down and seemed to enjoy being groomed. After that, I was out there almost every day after school and on weekend afternoons. I told my folks that I was going bike riding, which was partly true. Carla May came with me once or twice, but she wasn't much interested in horses and was still a little afraid of Rehnquist. Eventually, she stopped coming with me, but swore to keep my secret. At first, Rehnquist had come out to the barn to see that I knew what I was doing, and then when he saw that I had the hang of it and wasn't going to kill myself, he left me pretty much on my own. I arranged a nice little tack room in the back of the barn with all Treasure's things, brushes, liniment, saddle, and bridle, and once Treasure was used to me, I saddled her up and walked her around behind the barn. As we got acquainted, I rode her further and faster until we were galloping around like Roy Rogers himself. Sometimes I would come into the barn and Rehnquist would be there, rubbing Treasure's nose and talking softly to her. And when he saw me, he would look embarrassed and pretend that he had been talking to himself, and he'd suddenly get real busy with some chores somewhere else. I could tell the horse was a real pet to him, and that he missed riding her now that he was too old. I always took my sketch pad out to Rehnquist and would draw Treasure. One cold day I was sitting on the porch drawing when I heard him playing his concertina inside. I wanted to go in and warm up, so I went up and I knocked on the door. He grumped about how I was pestering him, but he let me in. "You do play your concertina, don't you?" I asked. "No," he said. "I heard you," I said, going over to the table where he had left it. "Hands off." "I wasn't touching it." "Yeah, well, don't. You don't have to be so rude about it," I said, and he sat down with his face behind a newspaper and paid no more attention to me, so I went over and showed him my drawing of Treasure. "What do you think?" I asked. "Not bad." I sat down in a chair facing him. "I'm going to draw a picture of you." "Oh, no, you ain't." "Well, why not?" "Go home," he said irritably. "Just let me draw your picture," I said, and started to sketch the outline of his face. He squinted away from me in his chair. "Stop that." "Sit still," I ordered him. "You're going to make some man a terrible wife some day," he said angrily. "You're too bossy." "I'm not going to be a wife. I'm going to be a painter." And I kept on drawing. "When you grow up, you'll get married," he said. "Want to bet?" "How will I know if I win?" he asked. "I won't be here when you grow up." "Don't sit so stiffly. Relax." "I told you, I don't want you to draw my picture. Now smile." "Smile?" he said. "What have I got to smile about? I've got a lot of hard work here and nobody to help me. People cheat me and you come around pestering me. What have I got to smile about?" "My father didn't cheat you," I said, annoyed. "Never mind about your father," he said, and hid his face behind his paper again. "I can't see your face," I complained. "Go on home. I've got things to do." "Just let me finish this. I want to get the lines in your face right." And I reached forward and I pulled the newspaper away. "Lines?" he said. "Wrinkles, you mean." "Well, wrinkles are interesting. My grandmother has wrinkles. She says they're a map. They're like a map, that all the things you've done in your life show on your face. I don't have any wrinkles because I haven't done anything yet." And I looked at him more closely. "Next time I'll bring my paints. You have such blue eyes." "Ugh," he said, raising the newspaper again. "Blue eyes. Put down that paper, please." "Boy, you're a bossy kid," he said. "You remind me of a bossy little girl I once knew. She lived on the next farm when I was a boy. Pearlie Blake was her name. You're a lot like Pearlie." And he put his paper down and seemed to be thinking back for a moment. "She was always bossing me around and getting both of us in trouble. I remember one time she was sassing her ma at the dinner table, and her ma sent her up to her room without any dessert, so Pearlie snitched a big plum out of the kitchen on the way up to the room. Then a few minutes later I came by outside her window and whistled up at her, and she was going to climb out the window. So she put the big plum in her mouth so she could use both hands to raise the window, and she just got her head out and bam! Down come the window right on her neck, and she was stuck. She couldn't get no leverage to push the window up from inside, and she couldn't yell because the plum was stuck in her mouth. He started to cackle at that, and I laughed too. It was the first time I'd ever seen him even smile, let alone laugh. I about died laughing, he went on. I finally went and got her ma, and she let her loose and gave her a good spanking for it. He looked over at me. So you better watch your step, sister. What happened to Pearlie? I asked. I don't know, he said sadly. She moved away. She'd be old now, like me. Maybe she's dead. He seemed to be lost in his memories and didn't say any more, and neither did I. I kept on drawing, and he picked up his old concertina and began to play, a sad little song I'd never heard before, and when he finished he looked over at me and seemed to remember where he was. Before he could tell me to get out, I jumped up and I showed him the sketch of him I had just done. How do you like it? Ugly, he said. Would you like to have it? What would I want with that? He asked. Go on home, you're wasting my time. Okay, I'm going, and don't forget to put Treasure in the barn and make sure she's got her feed. I know, I'll do it. Well, see that you don't forget, Pearlie, he said, and as he went to open the door, I left the sketch of him behind on the kitchen table where he'd be sure to find it. The next time I was in the house, I saw the sketch hanging on the wall, all pasted down on a piece of cardboard to keep it from getting wrinkled. When he saw me looking at it, he looked embarrassed. Looks real good there, I said, feeling rather proud. Had to get it out of the way somewhere, he said. Oh, I said, I thought maybe you put it up there because you liked it. Smart aleck kid, he mumbled. Just like Pearlie Blake. She must have been a lot of fun, I said, thinking of the story he had told me. Yep, that Pearlie was something, he laughed softly. We used to have the best time together. I remember her dad had a big old pig that was Pearlie's pet. She used to ride him. She had an old wooden bucket that she took most of the staves out of and turned it upside down over the pig's back and sat on it like a saddle. And she'd get on the pig and ride all over the barnyard. One Sunday we just come back from Sunday school together, all dressed up, and Pearlie's ma told us to get changed into our old clothes before we played outdoors. Of course, old Pearlie never listened to her ma, so she just whistled at that pig, and it came waddling out, and we both got on its back, and it took off running, dumped us both right in the hog waller. Oh, our clothes was covered, the worst thing you'd ever smelled. Pearlie's ma and pa came running, and I thought we was going to be tanned for that, but when they saw us, they busted out laughing so hard they couldn't get mad. So Pearlie's pa just took us over to the horse tank and got a bucket and threw water on both of us till the slop was washed off. Then her ma pressed our clothes out dry. She never did tell my folks, or I'd got tanned myself. He looked at me for a moment. You sure remind me of her, he said. Smart alecky as the day is long, and he stomped on outdoors to do his chores. After that, I would sometimes sketch him, doing things, when he was working around the house or the barn. I'd try to catch the lines of his old body or the way he moved, and he would always shake his head and wonder aloud why I didn't get tired of that fool drawing. But he always wanted to see what I had done, and sometimes he would say that it about looked real, which I took to be a compliment coming from him. Meanwhile, I was going crazy trying to find enough time to sneak away from home and be with Treasure. I daydreamed that I could get Dad to buy her for me, but I knew it was just a dream. I made my usual hints about horses at the dinner table every night. I wouldn't dare come right out and ask for a horse, but I thought talking about it, lots of mention of Roy Rogers and Dale Evans and Trigger might help. I always left my Roy Rogers comics lying around in conspicuous places and cut out all the pictures of horses in the Saturday Evening Post and put them on my mirror. My dad knew what I was up to, and I would make his own hints back about how people who live in town couldn't have horses unless they wanted a horse sleeping in bed with them, and then I would casually mention that Billy Wilde kept his horse in Haskell's barn, which was very cheap. It was a rule of this game Dad and I seemed to be playing, that neither of us ever mentioned directly that I wanted a horse, but I did ask for cowboy boots like Billy's. You never know when I might have a chance to ride somebody else's horse, I said, trying to sound practical. At least I would be prepared with boots. My father didn't seem impressed. It's dangerous to go riding someone else's horse. You never know what might happen. Grandma chimed in. Cowboy boots will ruin your feet. Roy Rogers wears them all the time, I pointed out, and his feet aren't ruined. You've got to wear good sturdy Oxfords until your feet stop growing, said Grandma. My gosh, I'll probably have to wear my Oxfords to the senior prom when I'm in high school, just to make sure my darn feet don't get ruined. I got no further with any of my arguments, and I decided I should be happy that I had Treasure to take care of and ride once in a while. It never occurred to me that things might not go on forever just the way they were.